Okay, Mary, I thank you for your time today for meeting with me. I know how precious time is and I really appreciate it. So today we're just going to be reflecting together on the notes from the lesson I observed the other day when you were starting your unit on what happens if there isn't enough water, and you introduced with the phenomenon of the Dust Bowl. So before we start talking, what's on your mind? Is there anything on your mind that you would want to address about this lesson or unit before we start talking?
I don't think so. The kids really like the idea of the Dust Bowl, and once I kind of throw that out there as, here's why water's important, they want so much to learn more about the Dust Bowl. It's like, well, no, actually, we're going to look at the good parts about water, and so I've had to find other ways to try to incorporate the Dust Bowl into our academic time elsewhere so that they can kind of get their fix. So
Good. Well, and my next question was how the unit has been going since I saw the opening day. So that kind of leads into it, but do you want to tell me more about how your unit is going?
yeah, we've been looking at the different types of water on the earth, how much of our water is usable and not, and I think that was very shocking for them because we always seem to have the water that we need, and how is it that we have 71% of our earth is taken up by water that we can't use. And so even though our unit didn't focus a whole lot on hydroelectric power and ways that we can I don't know if desalinify is a word, but make ocean water usable, that's been an interest too. And then this last lesson that we've been working on has been about determining where would be a good place to dig a well if you were a pioneer going out on your own. And we looked at the landscape, the rocks and soil, and then the plants. We were given information about each, and then they had to discuss among them to see which place made the most sense, and then put all those clues together and figure out where should they dig their well. So
Wonderful. So it sounds like you're connecting science and social studies quite a lot.
Yeah.
Two of your passions.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
How about the pacing of this unit? How is that going for you?
The pacing, I mean, the lessons are very user friendly. They're easy to work with. That part of it's going well. My class has gotten everything done, and now I'm looking for fillers while the other two classes catch up. So, it depends a lot on, who the kids are, the mix of the kids, whether or not they're talkers, and whether or not, I guess, honestly, I mean, whether or not this makes enough difference to them that they're going to really think deeply about it. Because some kids, they're good with just knowing that, you turn on the faucet and there's the water. So they don't care that water's recycled. And, when I told them that, it's the same water since dinosaurs have been around. So basically it's been filtered dinosaur pee, and they're like, but they still really like that visual.
Yes. Yeah. There's you making it fun again. I love that. So since you teach 3 sections of this curriculum every day, the pacing is feeling a little different for each section.
It does. It does. Yeah.
So thinking back to the lesson that I observed you teach that day that I gave you the notes for, what did you focus on while you were preparing for that lesson or to open this unit?
Well, I guess I wanted to be able to give them as much of the history behind it as possible, because everything, whether it's science, social studies, whatever, it's not a standalone thing. And the first time I taught this lesson, I was really shocked to find out. I mean, I knew the Dust Bowl, the Great Depression, World War II, I did not realize how they kind of were all stacked on each other at the same time. So that was something that I thought was important for the kids to know. This wasn't just one crisis, it was a number of crises that people had to deal with. And kind of pulling in some geography, where in the country this was, how far north and south, east and west, and then discussing, maybe why didn't it make it to California or out east. And, it's just really interesting to hear, what their thoughts are. And then I think at the end I'll be able to say, so what have you learned now about things that may help you think about why the Dust Bowl didn't get, the fact that there were the mountains, and that changes things. And we're going to do a lot more with, weather and how land affects it next year. But the wheels are starting to turn.
Wonderful. So thinking back to that day, you did a wonderful job of, you had the whole room full of artifacts, timelines, maps, kids. You were moving around the room. At one point, some of the kids said they couldn't see, so they moved up front. What, if anything, did you notice about the engagement of the kids toward the front versus the kids toward the back of the room, either during this lesson or in general?
Well, I guess part of it is, what are we looking at and why are we looking at it? If it's a video, that may be a time when kids almost feel a license to kind of slack off. But then, depending on the video, if it's something that, is interesting to them, they're more willing to pay attention. But the fact that they're asking to come up front, that's always a good sign to me that they are showing that they want to be engaged. They want to take the notes, or they want, and I mean, I'm just glad that they feel comfortable enough to ask and tell me, I can't see, I can't hear, whatever. And so, when they need to come up, that's fine. But then I always remind them, this is not a social hour. You're not laying on the floor. You're not going to sleep. You're here to work and listen. And they usually do pretty good with that.
Yeah. So you mentioned a lot of different things that you did to prepare for this unit and this lesson. How do you think that preparation helped this lesson to be successful?
Well, I mean, first of all, it makes them think I know what I'm doing, which is always a good thing. And I'm just the kind of person, I don't want to just fly in and hope things go well. So, I mean, it makes me feel better and more secure with what I'm doing. I don't want to, these kids go home and they tell their parents, well, my teacher said, well, I don't want to be that teacher that says something that's just crazy. I need to feel like I know what I'm talking about so that I can answer their questions too. And I tell them, if I don't know the answer, I will fess up. And I say, I was not born a science teacher, so I don't know. And every day that you learn, I'm learning with you, because even though this is my second time through this particular lesson, it's a different classes, have different questions about different things. And so I'm always learning along with them, but I try to be as prepared as I can, just so that I don't have to say, I don't know, so many times.
Right. So speaking of their questions and their answers, did anybody's questions or answers surprise you?
Honestly, I can't think of anything right off the top of my head.
That's okay.
But I know there are, especially about the Dust Bowl, kids will ask questions, and it's like, I don't know. I mean, I showed them lots of pictures of, how people were managing to get through the Dust Bowl and things like that. And it's always amusing to me when, they see all this and they're like, well, why didn't they just hide under their beds? Well, the dust, dust is tiny particles and it blows everywhere. So whether it's over the bed or under the bed, it's still there. Well, why didn't they just pull the covers over their face? Well, but if the dust is blowing and it blows over your covers, that's going to start to weigh down on you. How are you going to breathe? So, I don't always like to answer the question. I kind of like to answer a question with a question and make them kind of think and walk through it. And sometimes walking through it doesn't get there, and finally say, you know what, the dust just blew constantly, and there was just no way to get away from it. But they have to take that walk and they have to think it through, because, and you can see when it happens, they go, oh yeah, okay, got it.
Yep. That's why we do what we do, right? That light bulb moment. You talked about asking or answering questions with a question. What kind of questions do you think really get your kids thinking deeply?
Well, obviously anything open-ended. I mean, you don't want the simple yep or nope. And things that they can apply, to their own life, because, we've never been through anything like a Dust Bowl or a Great Depression or anything that has affected our world so much. But, their big question with this was, can this happen again? Well, anything could happen again, and, the whole thing is getting them to think about the possibilities of the world around them. And I was telling them the other day, I can't remember what it was, but I said, when you start thinking about these things at your age, I said, you could be the next one. You could be the guy or girl who figures out how we can take the salt out of the ocean in a way that is fiscally responsible. I didn't use fiscally because that's a big word, but you could be the one that figures out how it is that we could do this, and how we can make more usable water, because I talked about California always seems to be in a drought. Well, the ocean's right there, but you can't water your lawn with salt, because what did we see that just happened with the salt when we left it out? Oh, it dries up, and it, so, they have to be able to make those connections and to figure out why our current situation doesn't work. What might work? What did we do to figure out why something may or may not work? And then, the biggest question is, how could we maybe find a way to make that work? Because it is an overwhelming thought to think, all of California is all water, but you can't use any of it.
Yeah. So this reminds me of yesterday's PD. You'll be that teacher that's invited to their Nobel Prize award for getting the salt.
I don't know about that, but I have had.
You're inspiring kids.
Some kids come back and say, we fought for 6 years, but if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be where I am today. Oh,
isn't that awesome?
Well, thanks.
That's wonderful. Yeah. So when I have been in your classroom that day and others, as always, there's kids that raise their hand quite a lot and some that don't as much. What do you think contributes to the kids that are raising their hand a lot?
Well, there's always kids that have a lot to say and have a lot of ideas, and they just want to get it out. So I appreciate the fact that they're raising their hand and not just blurting it out. And, some of their ideas are right on track and some are out there. But, they want to be acknowledged. And I think maybe that's why I don't have quite so much blurting, is because I try to acknowledge those that raise their hands, no matter how many times they're up. Just trying to engage them, give them their moment, so that maybe they can focus. So,
Do you ever do like the think, pair, share like we used to do in the open SciEd? Like tell your neighbor and then we'll tell the class? Or
yeah, I'll do, talk with your elbow partner, talk with your table. Now let's hear what the group has to say.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's a nice way to. I always like to try that when I saw 25 hands go up. Like
Yeah.
you said, you want to give them all a voice, but
Right.
there might not be time.
Right.
So
Yeah.
awesome.
So
all right.
they just need to get it out, and they need to do it in an appropriate way.
Yes.
I guess, so.
Yes. So what might you do the same or differently as you plan future lessons for this unit? What's your next steps?
Well, right now my biggest problem is that I have a big lab coming up, and the way our schedule is not very helpful for me right now. So trying to figure out how my kids are going to be able to get the full experience when we have to break our class in half. And that's more just like a logistical problem almost, more so than a planning type thing. I mean, you can see all over, I've gotten the bottles ready, I've gotten the cups out, everything's ready to go. It's just a matter of how am I going to do this? Because, last year, 2 years ago, whenever I taught this last, class length was different. Classes were more blocked out rather than cut in half. And so it's just learning to work within the framework that I've been given. And this is really the first experiment that is going to cause me the biggest headache. I've done earlier experiments that have been kind of problematic, but this one especially because it's about how do we make it rain, and it's using hot and cold water, and how do I where can I make the break where it's because I've seen it happen. The kids need to see it happen. That's the whole point of this. And I'm just concerned that we're not going to be able to have the learning time that we need to beforehand, so that they can understand what they're actually watching. So I've got to think about that some more.
So working with you is really nice because you're always willing to work within the logistics, but the schedule can be challenging.
Yeah.
So if you need some support with that, let me know too.
Okay.
Okay. But thank you for thinking that through.
Yeah.
I thank you for answering my questions today. Anything else on your mind before we close things up?
I don't think so.
Okay. Okay. Well, you may have already read this in the notes, but I would definitely encourage you to continue telling your stories. Kids love them. I love them. Yes, it is just such a strength of yours as a teacher, and it's just inspiring to listen to. I think the other day when Mr. Shannon was in your room, I think he was just all into it because he is very much like you in that way. He loves stories and he loves history, and he couldn't stop talking about it.
Well, and it helps that, I've lived so many different places.
Yes.
And I do know a rocket scientist, and I do know, a paleontology guy, and I know so many different people, and, I hope to inspire kids to go out and see the world, because so many times I'll be in a class and I'll tell the kid, where do you want to go? And you're like, I'd like to go to Des Moines. Think bigger. St. Louis? No, bigger, you know. And so, I want these, and you don't have to travel, to have a good life, but there's so many things out there. And, I've told the kids my original degree was in social work, and then I changed to something else. I said, I've worked in an ice cream shop. I've driven a bookmobile. I've worked in nursing homes. I've you name it, I've probably done it, and it's just always nice to not like brag on myself or anything, but just look at all the opportunities you're going to have before you have to settle down on one thing. And even when you do settle on one thing, that can morph into other things. As a social worker, I worked with kids and families and older adults and all that. I said, and I still do. It's just a little different now. And so I just want these kids to realize the world's a big place and there's so many things, and even the things that I'm telling them now, they're going to have jobs that no one's even thought of yet, but as long as they're thinking and their minds are growing, I don't care what you do, just get out there and try something, so
yeah, well,
okay.
I would encourage you to keep that up. We may have talked about this before. I can't think of the author, but there's a book called Teach Like a Pirate, and pirate is an acronym for some things I can't think of off the top of my head, but one thing that really stuck with me with that book is he keeps a notebook of like, ooh, this happened in my life, that's a good story or whatever, and it just, it makes me think of you every time because you are so good at bringing all that in.
Do you have a copy of that
I think
book?
I do, yeah.
Well,
I'll see if I can get you one
from you sometime.
Yes.
Because,
yeah. You don't even have to borrow it. I'll just give you one. It's good.
And I mean, obviously I like to talk, but these kids are so thirsty, and I mean, there's things that they've never even thought about or considered. And when I tell them, I lived in a town of 165 people, and that's where my rocket scientist came from. And they're like, wow, And it's like, yeah, you are only limited by your own mind. You're going to make or break who you become based on where your thoughts can be. And you dream big, you'll go far. And it's okay to want to live in the same hometown and to continue on the family farm. And that's great. You don't have to be a rocket scientist or a ballroom dancer or, a mammoth hunter in Russia. You don't have to.
Right.
But you can be if you want to.
I love that.
And that's...
Well, that's serving our kids well. So I would encourage you to continue that. You do such a good job activating that prior knowledge, connecting it to their lives, partner thinking, like all of that. Just your room is a thinking room, and I thank you for that.
Well, I'd like to hear that.
Yes, well, good. And yeah, I would just definitely encourage you to keep up those deep questions. Like you said, it's the open-ended questions that make your kids think.
Yeah.
And I will be in again, and we will also have a follow-up conversation about your IPDP coming up. So if you want to think about topics, whether it's a book study or deep questioning or your new curriculums, whatever it might be that you want to learn more about, that's also tied to your goals and our building goals, we'll talk about that soon. So just let me know how I can support you.
Okay.
Okay.
I will. I always do.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for your time.
Sure.